Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about the huge victory that Furia just got at the FISSURE Playground 2 event that just took place this past weekend, marking another win from a different team in kind of this season of parity that we're having in the second half of 2025, because obviously the first half of the year was dominated by the Vitality era. But now, in this season, you had Spirit obviously win the first event of the season at Cologne, and then they followed it up with another win at Blast Bounty. Then you got MongolZ getting a win, obviously, at EWC. G2 shocked the world with a win over at Blast London. And now Furia have done it here at FISSURE Playground 2 against some really good competition. And this is the first really big trophy for the Furia organization in Counter-Strike. And I mean, Quesarado and Yuri have been there basically since Jump Street. And, you know, these 7 years, they have never been able to attain a title like this one. This is obviously also MongolZ's biggest victory, being, you know, very young in his career, being a rookie, obviously looking like the rookie of the year at this point for 2025. You know, Yukindar has never won a title of this stature either, you know, in his career. And then really for Fallen, this is his biggest win probably since he won EPL with SK back in like late 2017 or something like that. So these are some really, really big milestones for these Furia guys. And, you know, for some of them who haven't tasted success in a while, this is just a really sweet way to go. And it's been kind of building up for a while. You know, this team has been putting together some different results here and there that made you kind of believe that they did have some ability to contend. And we thought maybe it might come a little bit sooner. Like London was an event that we thought maybe it could happen, but G2 ultimately obviously broke through in that scenario. But now they finally have done it. They have finally gotten their own trophy. And so this is very, very impressive stuff. And so I really wanted to kind of take a look at, you know, how Furia were able to build up to this point, you know, and then kind of just talk through what happened at FISSURE and some of the strengths of this team and, you know, what to look out for going forward. But before I get into all that, folks, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel, as I'm still trying to get this thing growing. We're still really getting close to that 5,000 subscriber mark. So just, if you haven't already, please do that. Also, leave a like, leave a comment. All those things certainly do help feed the algorithm, help the channel grow, and keep the content coming, which is what I plan on doing. But without further ado, let's really kind of break down what Furia has been up to lately, how they got this win, and what to look forward to going into these next tournaments coming up. So, I mean, really, first things first, when this lineup first came together, and Furia finally decided to move away from being a fully Brazilian team and decided to go international, to take Fallen away from being an in-game leading opper, which he has been for a very, very long time at this point. I mean, the guy, basically ever since ZQKS left that one Kaboom TD team that he was playing with at like that X Games Aspen event back in 2015, and that team kind of started forming into Keyed Stars and later into Luminosity and then into SK, you know, obviously having their big moments in 2016 and 2017, you know, from basically that point forward, like the end of 2015, I believe it was, into early 2016, up until this roster came together here in 2025, he wasn't opping IGL. And, you know, for a couple of years, he was a star opper, you know, or at least a very high level opper in the IGL slot. And again, had a lot of success with that LG SK lineup. And yeah, just had a lot of success, obviously, in that role. So to see him put the op down and to put his faith in MongolZ, a guy from complete obscurity, you know, a guy that we really didn't know anything about, coming in and, you know, turning into the star of this team, or one of the two stars of this team. I would say him and Quesarado are definitely very well up there, but Yukindar and Yuri can have very high impact. It's truly phenomenal stuff. And again, when we saw this lineup on paper, we just did not expect it. You know, we had obviously already seen the experiment of an opping IGL move to more of a rifling IGL role when the whole situation happened with Cadian going to Astralis and putting down the op so that Device could remain the primary opper of that team, and that obviously didn't go very well. And so yeah, this was, you know, something that was obviously in the back of our minds when we're thinking about Fallen trying to make that same transition so late in his career. You know, I think a lot of people would have been thinking that Fallen might be looking to essentially transition into coaching at some point and maybe try to coach up another person to IGL this team going forward. And that still may very well be something that happens later, but now he's winning his first big title in a very, very long time. And again, for, you know, Yuri and Quesarado, this is their first big real trophy with the Furia organization. Again, Yakindar's biggest win, MongolZ certainly his biggest win, with him just really having his rookie year this year. And so, man, that's crazy stuff. And Yuri kind of slotting into new roles and finding a way to still be effective and impactful. Yakindar revitalizing his career. His stock had plummeted, towards the end of his time on Team Liquid, and no one really had any faith that this guy could come back and be any type of really high-level player. He did his own little IGL stint. Obviously, that didn't go so hot. And then, just wasn't really a high-level player for a very long time. And he has found some type of second wind, I guess you could say, in this squad. Quesarado still remains a star rifler, but now he finally has a true supporting cast around him. But again, when this team first came together on paper and we were eyeballing this roster, this international experiment that Furia were trying to do, there was really not a whole lot of high hopes for this team, to be honest. I mean, I really, truly myself, as an analyst in the scene, didn't see this team being anywhere near where they're at. Like, they are a team that is probably 6th in the world, probably right now, are trying to attack for a top 5 position in the world. I mean, this is really crazy stuff. And let's kind of look at, what they were doing coming into this tournament. So obviously, prior to the win here at Fissure, they really kind of broke out at PGL Astana, their debut event. And this is MongolZ playing really his first big LAN, first notable LAN of any kind. The first time really playing at a high level of Counter-Strike, and he's doing it in his home country, in his home city of Astana, and helping this team go all the way to a 4th place finish. Now, to be fair, the competition wasn't the highest at this event, but Gamer Legion was a pretty legit team at this point in the year. Like, they were a team that had a couple of big finishes kind of coming into this time period, so that was a pretty legit win. Yeah, I'll admit, like, the wins over Made in Brazil and Audic are not going to be that high of value, but they got a map off of Spirit. Had some decent gains against them in the next 2 maps, and they took a map off of Aurora as well. So all in all, that 4th place finish at Astana was actually pretty solid. Now, obviously, they didn't do so well at IM Dallas, right? Game Legion getting their revenge. MongolZ beating them up again, only being able to get that one against Lenvision. But then you go into the Blast Austin Major, and they're able to work themselves into a quarterfinals position. Getting, the win over M80, beating Bait, getting a BO1 win over MongolZ and over Aurora, taking care of VP, and then ultimately losing to Pain in the quarterfinals was kind of disappointing, but still, to make it to the major playoff was pretty solid. Now, their first time around at Fissure, they didn't do so hot. They got knocked out by Saul in 2 different games that they lost to them. I mean, that was really kind of damning. But then they come back and they bounce back at Cologne with a 5th, 6th place finish, and, maybe some lighter wins, I guess you could say, against FlyQuest and Astralis. But being able to beat a Falcons team that has a load of talent on it. And I know that people meme on Falcons, and obviously Falcons had the big, choke job at the Blast Austin Major, but that was a team that for a little while there, was doing great. I mean, they obviously won the PGL Bucharest event, the last event with Dexter. When they got Munacy embedded, they started having some big moments, like around Blast Rivals and some of these other events where they were kind of continuing to be a top 3 team. They still do have loads of firepower, and I think they are a team that realistically will probably put themselves in a position to contend for a top 5 spot, as much as people want to hate on them, and I totally get it. But yeah, I mean, this is still a legit win against a team with talent, and took a map off of Mouse Sports and ultimately had a really close series against a team that was basically second fiddle to Vitality for the bulk of the year. So, I mean, this was a pretty good stuff all in all. And obviously, they got knocked out of Blast Open London kind of right away after, making it to the online qualification portion of that event. They get knocked out right away by G2. But yeah, they come into this, and we get into, the whole BO3 Swiss system, and they tear it up. Like, they beat Liquid, which is fair enough. They're going through a transition process and have had their struggles. But then they beat G2, who are off of a tournament victory. So they get a 2-0 there. That's pretty freaking legit. And then they get some win over Pain eventually, and they come out of the Swiss system 3-1. And so their first playoff match is actually against Astralis, who are going through a bit of a transition period. Bacius coming onto the team, obviously, in place of Stound, and, they're still kind of getting things going. But Fury absolutely bulldozed them on train. Really didn't have any trouble at all getting that 9-round CT side to win this one 13-9. And Nuke was a closer affair. It went into multiple overtimes, but ultimately Furia are going to come out on top of this quarterfinal. And, it's kind of your usual suspects playing very, very well. I mean, I guess Yuri had a little bit of an off series overall, but Fallen again, fragging much better as a rifling IGL than we would have anticipated. I mean, I'm not going to call him no fragging IGL. He's definitely not the level of like a Blitz or what Amaka was trying to do with 3D Max before they made Gravity the in-game leader of that team, or what Apex was able to do last season with Vitality. And there's a few other names out there who certainly can frag at a pretty high level as well. I wouldn't put Fallen necessarily up there, but he's been shown to have impact and have some good games against some good teams at times, and at least isn't a burden on the team. Kind of putting that like mid-range, like 0.95 plus rating type of thing kind of on the regular. So good stuff there. Yakindar, again, been kind of the third fiddle of this team. Him and Yuri are kind of exchanging who's kind of the third best player, it seems like, in the server a lot of the time. And then, MongolZ and K-Serrado being your two key stars. That has been kind of the case throughout the run that this lineup has had. And then we get into the Falcons match, and this very nearly was Falcons walking away with the grand final spot in this semifinal. Like, this was very, very narrow, and Falcons definitely fumbled on a couple of occasions, but Furia also played pretty well. And we'll kind of start by looking at Train. I mean, Furia start on the T side. They go up 5-1 after the 2-0 start. I think one of the big ones was at round 4, you had Yuri that had like this really big double kill from Pop that helped them get into outer yard, and that really helped them build up that 5-1 lead that they ultimately were able to get here after they kind of, crushed the Falcons' economy. And then after that, Falcons are able to get it into a 9-7 position. But then it was kind of some very tense rounds. Like after this 4-0 start, things got really, really heated. Lots of trading back and forth, fragging-wise within each round. Falcons also had some opening picks but couldn't convert. And it really just goes back and forth. But ultimately, Falcons are up 12-11 going into the final round of regulation. And MongolZ actually gets an opening pick at Ivy against Valadoy, and Tessus catches Yakindar later as well. So they're up in a 5-on-3. Then they have a trade with K-Serrado as they're coming out Ivy, because he's on top of that train, and they get that kill. But in that trading sequence, I think K-Serrado also got a dink on somebody. And so now you have a 4-on-2, but Falcons are so focused on splitting outer from Pop and Ivy that they just don't realize that Falling is sitting inside T main with an MP9. He comes out, he gets 2 kills with the MP9, gets it into a 2 versus 2. They ultimately win that, and they're able to force it into overtime. And this very clearly should have been a Falcons win. I mean, it was a back and forth affair kind of throughout the second half, but once they had 12-11 and they had a 5-on-3 and then into a 4-on-2, like that should be a win. And Nico was the guy at Pop that clearly should have caught Fallen whenever he came out team main after he got his first kill at the MP9. But for Fallen to get a second kill at the MP9 against Nico at Pop, I mean, that was really, really brutal. And so again, this very easily could have been Falcons' map, but instead Furia put into overtime. And when they do, I mean, Furia just do such a fantastic job in OT. Beautiful finishing touch this final round. Go watch this round if you haven't watched it. This is round 28, the final round of the game. Just a beautiful set piece on the inner bomb site. I mean, really, I think one of the things I can say, about Train when I think about Furia is that they do this really cool job of putting Yakindar in like weird positions as an entry fragger. Like he's actually playing Ivy sometimes on defaults, which is not normally where you would put an entry. Usually your entry man is kind of like either team main to, really help with the outer hits, or, he's kind of playing Pop and, controlling that area of the map or something along those lines. But they're really kind of just using K-Serrado on Yuri, like doubling up inner halls into Pop and doing some cool stuff with that. Fallen's kind of playing team main where he can kind of be in a central position and kind of dictate what happens from there. And, they just do some really cool stuff. I mean, they, have all the typical outer play that you can go for, but they have some really good set pieces for the inner bomb site, mix in some triple Ivy plays and some heavy Ivy openers. I mean, in the round I just talked about, they have at times been able to find picks down Ivy and things of that nature. So it is just a really, really cool play style. Yuri has become a really good inner anchor. The rest playing outer very effectively, and ultimately are able to get this win, though, again, opportunity was certainly there for Falcons. Then we get into Nuke. And Nuke has been interesting because at Cologne, coming into this second season, they actually had made some changes after the Blast Austin Major, where they moved Fallen to ramp as an anchor in that position where Yuri had been playing there. Now Yuri is playing on the A side, so a little bit of a pivot there. K-Star still playing kind of the A door, helping yard position. Yakindar still being the main yard defender. And coming into this, Furia go up 4-0 on that CT side. Falcons are able to fight back and win 6 of the last 8 rounds to tie things up. Falcons were just having a lot of success with their outer pressure. Tessus had a couple of big rounds at ramp, including this one round where he got like a flank with a deagle on Heaven. I think against, it was, Fallen, like in Hell or Heaven, he gets that kill. That was round 10 of the game. But then Furia just get off to a hot start on the T side, going up 5-0, thanks to a pistol win and winning the opening gun round and taking an 11-6 lead. And a lot of this was just controlling the economy, winning the pistol, but also they had like this really big ramp push into a lower take on one of the opening gun rounds to really get things rolling. But to Falcons' credit, they're able to rally it back to where they're at a point where it's 11-9, I believe it was. Yeah, right here, 11-9. But then Fury are able to pull off a 3 versus 4 after going outer to lower to get it to map point. But then Falcons are able to call back again and get into a shot where they could put this into overtime. But on the final round, Nico has the big whiff at Secret, right? The big spray down whiff at Secret where the 4 guys are coming right at him from the Red Cross. Now, I know that a lot of people will blame this on Nico, and Nico probably should have gotten at least 1 kill from that position, if not maybe 2, just based on the jump that he had on them. But Kixon getting caught from Mini, I think, was one of the big issues that certainly occurred here as well. m0NESY wasn't really able to support him either, outer in particular. And even when all that happens, this still winds up turning into a 3 versus 3 as, Furia kind of pivot back to upper through Mini, and Tessus is able to get a kill, get into a 3-on-3, but then Yuri throws a little bit of a lower fake that pulls Kiyosuke away, and then he flies up the vents with his other 2 teammates, and they just take a 3-on-2 on the upper site, take it, win it, and Falcons no OT for you. It is instead Furia coming up with a 13-11 win. And again, on Nuke, it's just really good standard Nuke play from Furia. I mean, they're very good at just being heavy-handed, gathering up together and hitting with a lot of aggression and pace. They know all the different outer variations. They know how to use that to, split pressure the lower bomb site from Secret, as well as threaten Mini, still keep presence in lobby and really kind of just, figure it out as a team in the mid-rounding or call the fast-paced play right off the rip and go for a big play. And so instead of Falcons having a chance at 2-0 this series, honestly, is instead Furia who do it, and they move on to the grand finals to play against MongolZ. So the bans kind of go how you expect for the BO5, and MongolZ are going to pick Mirage first to the top of the table. Furia prioritize Inferno. Then we go Nuke, Overpass, and DusT 2 as our final 3 maps. And as we go into Mirage, as you can see, MongolZ kick it off really well. 8-4 T-half there. But Furia are ultimately able to steal this with a big comeback. And a lot of that comes down to just how they're able to respond with their own 3-0 start on the T side to kind of start clawing it back. I think one of the big rounds that happened in regulation was actually round 17, where MongolZ go for this like split push, B apartments and underpass, and we're actually able to, get back in position at A when, Furia starts going for the A hit, and they even have Techno actually on the flank, but Furia are still able to trade well at mid. They actually catch the flank just in time to stop Techno from being able to get in behind, and then they're able to get that round. In round 20, they had some just amazing split pressure all across the map to convert another really big round, and just generally throughout the game, just great mid control, great patience, great ability to split pressure. Yuri was always able to just get these sick timings out of Palace, and then they wound up winning the OT 4-1 to go up 1-0 in the series. And I think one of the biggest rounds to look at from that OT was the very first one, where they just have this full map control. Just again, they're so good at how they control middle. They were able to pressure window, get a guy into window, pressure ladder room, pressure the ability to walk up cat and the ability to take connector. And then again, Yuri just hits these crazy Palace timing peaks where he catches, I think it was 9-10 completely off guard. The Mazzino's playing up close on A ramp. Blitz is playing ticket. He didn't pick up on it. And then they just kind of use that to spot all the round and ultimately are able to get the victory. And what I really just like about generally with Furia's Mirage is, yeah, I mean, they're able to play some different variations of defaults. You know, Yuri being a very good A-side player, Quesarado being a very good, like, underpass pressure guy and mid-pressure guy. Obviously, Kindar and Fallen being some aggressors with their rifles. You know, Maladoy doing his thing with the AWP. Have some really good set pieces for the A-side, really good utility usage. And I think what they do really well is they just move personnel around a lot. Like, they, you know, can start up the starting spots for players and really change that up. They can switch up areas of focus. They can feint very effectively, and their split pressure is really good. Like, you know, there's rounds on Mirage, and it happened in this game against MongolZ, where it's like you got Yuri putting a lot of pressure on you at Palace. You're seeing the kind of standard, you know, mid pressure being applied. And then, you know, you got Fallen or Quesarado or both of them being able to pressure the B Apartments player. And when that's all happening simultaneously, it's very hard for anyone to really respond appropriately on how they should be rotating or how they should be countering. And then Furia can come from that split pressure and make the right commitment and do so with good spacing and timing and utility and trading efficiency to make big things happen. And so this was a big win in overtime from Furia to set the tone in the series. Now we get into Inferno, and Inferno was a big one for MongolZ because, yes, Furia do have a really good T side. Again, they've been kind of experimenting with their T side a little bit. Like, they're putting Yekindar like more in Apartments and Boiler and stuff like that with Fallen. They put Yuri back into helping Quesarado on the B control, when initially it was kind of like Yekindar playing more mid, Yuri was playing more on the Apartments, and Fallen was kind of, you know, as most IGLs do, kind of being that secondary B guy to Quesarado. But they kind of changed it all up here in this second season, you know, kind of around Cologne time period, where they've pivoted Yuri back to B instead of playing the Apartments. Yekindar has taken that up when they need to have a default guy in that position. And again, just playing a very aggressive, like, pacey style and very effective at it. But then whenever you flip sides, I mean, MongolZ pop off, dude. And Furia just have no response on the CT side, despite having such a brilliant start. And so now you wind up seeing the series tied up 1-1. And then we get on to Nuke, and so I'm not really going to talk too much about, like, how Furia plays Nuke, because I've already kind of talked a little bit about that with the Falcons game. So I'm trying to mix in, like, what actually happened in the game and also just what I'm noticing from Furia and how they're approaching these maps. But really on Nuke, it's both teams doing their jobs on the CT side. I mean, 9 rounds on the CT side, you know, for both teams collectively. So kind of the defensive-sided Nuke that you expect to see. But the OT is where you really get the job done, with Furia being able to get 3 T rounds in a row in OT in a game where T rounds were extremely hard to come by. And I think one of the big ones that I remember was Yekindar. I think it was the first one where Yekindar catches this crazy timing on 910, who's 910 has an op. He's watching Secret. Yekindar's creeping down, and like the second 910 looks away, Yekindar gets a kill. He picks up that op, and then Mazzino tries to flank him, and he picks off Mazzino with the AWP, and then they wind up spiraling that into a round victory. And then the next round, MongolZ do a lobby crunch where they push through hut, they push a couple of guys through ramp, and they actually turn it into a 4 versus 2. But then Furia claw it back, and Vaughn ultimately wins a 1 versus 2 to win the round. Just a ridiculous clutch. Like, go back and watch these OT rounds. It's actually absurd. And then the final run is they just bulldoze ramp into lower to 3-0 the half. Like, and again, that is what Furia have when they are doing well on the T side, is what they've shown they can effectively do, is play the standard stuff, but then just hit you in the mouth with like these crazy just barreling pushes that you just sometimes can't handle because you have Yekindar actually entering effectively, but the follow-up trading that, you know, Yuri and Quesarado are able to do, and then the opping that Maldo is able to do, and he has a decent rifle, they're just able to kind of spiral it, and ultimately they are able to take the 2-1 lead in the series with that comeback on Nuke in the OT. Now, Overpass, I'm not really going to talk about too much because it's one of those situations where this was only the second time that Furia has played Overpass. They had a win over G2 earlier. MongolZ also hasn't played a whole lot of Overpass. They came into this 2-0 in Overpass, so this is their third Overpass win, now 3-0. They had some wins over Game Legion and Tyloo in the past. And so it's kind of a toss-up prediction-wise on how it would actually play out. But MongolZ are on the CT side, go up 8-4. You saw some moments here and there from Furia, but we know how CT-sided overpass can be, and MongolZ really cashed in on that. And then you get kind of this really scrappy beginning to the second half where Furia is never really able to get their economy going because they lose the force buy in the second round. They claw back one of their own, but then MongolZ hits them right back, and, you know, it really kind of sets them off. And while they do win a couple of rounds, you know, it's coming down to diffuses. They're losing people in the process, having to rebuy a lot. So they just really couldn't get going. MongolZ ultimately able to take advantage of it and put this thing into a map 5. And then map 5 on DusT 2. Holy moly. What a way to finish things here in this one. As you can see, obviously MongolZ do take the 3-1 start here, but Furia go on a tear after that. They win this half 7-5, and it starts with the force buy win in the 5th round, which led to a double save for MongolZ. Then they come back after that double save, next full buy round for both teams. Furia just goes for a long A push, and they just brawl out at long A. I think this is round 8 to keep it going. So then MongolZ have to save again. Then round 11, you have a brawl at middle where, kind of similar to what MongolZ tried to do on Nuke with their lobby crunch through hut and ramp to try to get something going aggressively. They try to get aggressive at middle, pushing double doors, pushing off catwalk, and Furia just shuts that down right away, turns that into a victory. And that is pretty much all she wrote for the first half, with them just kind of dominating it after a false start. And then on the CT side, they just shut down. Perfect 6 rounds in a row, win the pistol, win the follow-up, win the opening buy round, and ultimately are able to get the job done to get a big final map victory, 13-5. I mean, obviously, this is a game that had, you know, very close matches, particularly the first 3 maps. But really, exclamation point here kind of at the end for Furia to ultimately win this thing on DusT 2. And performance-wise, yeah, MongolZ and Caserado were the stars of this team. MongolZ ultimately wins the MVP of the event, and they were 2 of the top 10 players in the event. And when you account for the amount of maps that got played, you know, Twist did very well with 18 maps, and obviously Mazzino from MongolZ did really well in his 22 maps played, but it really was these Furia guys with a high amount of maps played that really did put together some really big performances, and Yekindar, again, did have crazy impact when need be throughout as well. And as we're just kind of talking about Furia going forward, I mean, map pool is going to be an interesting one because they don't play Ancient. They've only played it the one time against Salt, FISSURE Playground. They lost in multiple overtimes. They kind of moved away from that. DusT 2 has been, you know, a little bit hit or miss, but they've been on a pretty hot kind of movement lately, kind of towards the end of Cologne and into FISSURE Playground 2, where they've definitely shown the ability to play DusT 2 at a high level and beat some high-level teams to do it. So definitely is a map in their wheelhouse. Inferno, much more of a 50-50 map for them throughout this lineup's time period, but still a map that they are capable of playing. I think their Mirage is really coming around. They started off very slow, you know, losing 5 of their first 6, but now they have won 5 of their last 6. And again, against some good competition like Mouse, like Falcons, obviously, you know, against MongolZ. So Mirage is definitely becoming a map that's very much in their wheelhouse. Then Nuke, they have been very good on that, 8-2 record. Overpass, too soon to call. And then Train, they are maybe the best Train team in the world right now. I mean, just the way that I like how they play Train. I love they have the best intercept pieces I've seen anyone run. So really, really good stuff on Train in particular. So basically, their map pool is they're pretty good on DusT 2. They've really turned their Mirage around, and they're really good on Nuke and Train. So I feel like they have like 4 really strong maps there between DusT 2, Mirage, Nuke, and Train. And then Overpass is still too early to tell. And then their Inferno, yeah, it's kind of a 50-50, but they still can play it. And they just aren't playing Ancient at the time. So all in all, not too shabby, a little bit of map pool to kind of work with going forward. Then player performance-wise, I mean, yeah, again, you're getting everything you want out of your stars. You know, Caserado was kind of this guy who's playing a flex rifler position, where on some maps he is playing like some extremity positions. And he's not necessarily an entry fragger, but he's a playmaker in some of those extremity roles, like, you know, playing that B underpass position on Mirage or playing Banana on Inferno. You know, some of these things, he's the B player on Overpass for them on the T side, for example. But then there's other maps like a DusT 2, for example, where he is very much like one of the main controllers on the map with Fallen, while you have Yuri playing B tunnels and actually Yekindar playing long A. And that's the other funny thing is, like, Yekindar, he is the pure entry of this team, make no mistakes about it, but he does sometimes play these positions you wouldn't expect an entry to play. With him playing Apartments now on Inferno, Long A on DusT 2, playing Ivy sometimes on Train. Yeah, he plays Yard on Nuke, so that's kind of what you would expect, and he is the main A rifler on Overpass. So there are some maps where he is kind of that traditional role that you expect an aggressive rifler to be in. But even when he's not playing that default position, he still always gets roped into being the entry when they actually do go for their full commitment. But you have Caserado, who is capable of being, a playmaker. He can go for a decent amount of opening attempts. I mean, when you look at it, Yekindar obviously, huge amount of opening attempts on the T side. And this is a really good success rate, by the way. Like, for the year, he is doing better than guys like Flames and Xertion. As far as success rate goes, especially in like the last 3 to 6 months, that has been really amplified. Obviously he's nowhere near the amount of output that a Donk has been able to do, or a Senzu, or a Xantares, or an Elige, and I'm not trying to say he's one of the best entries in the world, but he's not doing too shabby. And he also started really slow, I must say. Like, the first couple of tournaments, his success rate was actually quite low, and most of his impact was coming on the CT side. But now his T side is actually kind of stepping up in a pretty big way. MongolZ, on the more aggressive end for oppers, not a crazy amount, but still kind of on the higher end for oppers, especially early on in this team. He was very, very high up there. He was breaking the 20% range for a little bit their first few tournaments. He's kind of found a more balanced role in this team since then, but very successful when he goes for it. Caserado, I mean, this puts him in the same category as some of your big playmaking extremity players, like what Tanier was doing with Heroic, or what PR can sometimes do for Gamer Legion, or, kind of like what JL and Bit were doing for Navi last year when Navi was the team of 2024. He has been able to play that flex rifle position very, very well. And then Yuri's just been such a good trade fragger. Doesn't go for a lot of openings, because he has, been kind of put more in like trading positions, like assisting Caserado and Fallen and B Control on Inferno, or playing B tunnels on DusT 2. There's just some spots he plays where he's obviously not going to be taking a whole lot of opening shots, but he can get to the mix and still trade and be very effective. And this is pretty good for an IGL. To have that high of a success rate entering as an IGL, that's pretty damn good for IGL standards. So, again, like, getting really good performances out of their players. Like, Caserado is still a legit rifler, a legit star. He's often been a legit star rifler throughout most of his career on Furia, but now he truly has, like, a big supporting cast around him. There was a point in time where, like, Yuri was a true star player, and they had, like, Henny being, like, a star opper hybrid for them. So there's been other moments in his career where he's had some help, but it's been a while since he's had this much help and this good of help. Like, MongolZ is the fucking truth. He is one of the best oppers in the world right now, and he is clearly the rookie of the year right now. Some people are really hyping up that Kiyosuke might be the rookie of the year. And Kiyosuke might ultimately eventually shake down to be a better player because he plays, that aggressive rifling role, and it kind of becomes like the whole Donk versus Yiwu debate kind of all over again when you're like comparing Kiyosuke and MongolZ, long term. Obviously, it's way too early now to have that kind of talk. But yeah, I mean, this dude is really legit. Guys like Tanier, PR, like, he's passing up those guys for the Rookie of the Year race for sure. Just an absolute unit on the op, and an aggressive one, and just so fun to watch. It really makes Furia so fun to watch because of how they play the game. And then Yekindar, again, like, the second wind of his career he's having on this team is very, very impressive. And then Yuri is slotting into, more supportive positions at times, making some sacrifices to facilitate these other guys, but still effective as a trader. Almost kind of like what Spinks does, on Mousesports sometimes, where he is necessarily playing like the aggressive role that Xertion is, or, being the star, like Torzy is with the AWP, but still gets his as a trader. And Yuri is kind of doing a lot of the same thing, in my opinion. So really good composition that this team is going with. And again, when we saw this lineup on paper initially, we never would have expected it to come together like this. And so, yeah, that's going to do it. An absolutely impressive result from Furia. Again, the first really big win for this organization in 7 years. For Yuri and Caserado, this is super special for them to finally get that big win, that big trophy with Furia. And it's taken all this time to finally break the, mold of being a fully Brazilian team, being international. The paper, the lineup on paper clearly didn't look like a world beater. A lot of these guys where you're scratching their heads, like MongolZ coming at complete obscurity, Yekindar, stock very low. Fallen going from opping IGL, what he'd been doing for 10 years, to now being a rifling IGL all of a sudden again, was just this incredible pivot that we just did not anticipate would work out. And they showed glimmers of having some potential, like with Astana, with their, run to the playoffs at the Blast Austin Major with their 5th, 6th finish at Cologne. Making the playoffs of Blast London, showing us stuff here and there that maybe they actually could get something going. Occasionally getting wins against really good teams. Now they go all the way here at Fissure to get a trophy and continue again this season of parity that we have now. It's actually wild. Like, Vitality had the era in the first season of 2025. They haven't gotten a win yet this season. Meanwhile, Spirit's won 2, and now MongolZ has got one, Jisu's got one, now Furia's gotten one. Like, this is getting really, really wild. Falcons and Mouse are like, it's got to be hurting them right now if they can't get out there and get a trophy with the lineups that they have and the talent that they clearly do have available to them. It's just going to be curious to see how things really play out going the rest of this year into the Budapest Major. Like, this could get very, very interesting very, very quickly, because we went from a scene that seemed all but dominated, all but captured by one squad, to now all of a sudden there's a lot of teams in the hunt to be able to get a trophy. So really, really cool stuff for Furia, but also just really cool stuff from the scene. And hope you folks enjoyed this video. If you did, again, please subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff. And I'll see you on the next one.